Hi, this is Link, and I'm responding to an old Mykal of Defiance video from to Michael from Defiance, Ohio. And you asked a lot of questions to the amazing believer. I don't know if he ever responded to you, and I was pretty busy during that time of the year and didn't catch your video. If you'll recall, I think I was the first person to respond to one of your YouTube videos. Anyway, you were asking about when God came into existence. God has always existed. He's eternal. How big is he? The heavens cannot contain him. You asked how big he was. Let's see. What kind of stone should you use to stone people for various sins? You asked. Well, in the Old Testament, God gave a law to the nation of Israel. He gave it for their nation, for them to follow, and we can learn about God's righteousness from studying the law. What kind of stone should you use? Well, that's not specified. I guess any kind of stone, as long as you it doesn't break some other law, like you're not stealing somebody's stone, or you're not supposed to move your neighbor's boundary stone. So I guess you shouldn't use that as an excuse to steal land. But otherwise, in the Old Testament, under that law, they were supposed to use whatever stones were available to stone for sins that were death penalty crimes. Um, so some of the sins that you mentioned, blasphemy is a sin against God, and what you can learn from that is the fact that God had people stoned for that. Is that's a very serious sin. It's not just something you play around with. A lot of people blaspheme God and they think nothing of it. Um, you talked about someone who didn't scream loud enough when she was raped. It doesn't say that in the passage. It gives a principle of jurisprudence about if a woman is in the city and some people walk in on her, finding her committing adultery with a man that's not her husband, or the guy she's betrothed to someone else is considered adultery if she sleeps with another man. So people walk in on her, they find her there, and then she says, "Oh, it was rape, it was rape," but she didn't scream. She went along with it. Then that was what that was about. But if she's out in the field and nobody's there to help her, and she is raped, then since she was out in the field, she says, "Hey, I screamed," and there's no witnesses either way, then she's presumed to be innocent. Also, if a woman's found to be a virgin, or not found not to be a virgin, she was the husband gave a bride price for her for virgin. She was married under the pretense of being a virgin, pretended to be a virgin, got married, and then it was found she was not a virgin. Yes, that was a death penalty crime. What we can learn about that is that virginity is important to God, and I just made a video about that last week, or about a week or so ago. Um, and also about, well, yes, worshiping other gods is a sin. It was a death penalty crime. Um, and if you worship other gods, you'll stand before God on the day of judgment for it. Are witches and wizards real? Well, when the Bible's talking about witches and wizards, it's not talking about guys with stars on pointy hats and women with green skin that fly around on broomsticks. There are various kinds of people that do, witchcraft, different kinds of witchcraft. That's not the Bugs Bunny witch kind of thing. So yeah, it's not drawing from our medieval legends about witchcraft. But yes, that's a sin against God. Giving your children to Molech. Do you know what they did? They had this Molech statue, and they heated it up by putting coals in it. The Canaanite tribes did, or what is it, Moabites, whoever. They took their kids, they took the babies, and they burned them on this hot metal altar and killed the kids that way. That's what giving their children to Molech was. Yes, it's a death penalty crime to kill your kids by burning them to death to offer them to Molech. So angel-human crossbreeds, well, that's one interpretation of the passage. You ask what happened to them. Some people interpret that passage differently, not to refer to angels. Those who see it to refer to angels, look at it's either Jude or 2 Peter 2, where it talks about, or both those passages that talk about angels that did not keep their place, that they were imprisoned. So if that is talking about angels that produced hybrids with humans, then those angels were imprisoned. Um, did God break the curse of living 120 years? If I'm not mistaken, that statement was spoken about the days of man will be 120 was 120 years before the flood in the passage. So it's not necessarily talking about lifespan. You talk about there being a 70-year cap mentioned in the Psalms. That was for the children of Israel who were in the desert, that God was going to wait. He already decreed it. He was going to wait till that generation died, and then let the next generation go into the promised land. So people started dying off at about 70 years. And in 40 years' time, the older generation was dead, and the younger generation that had not disobeyed like the previous generation would go into the promised land. Remember, that previous generation had been offered to go into the promised land, but they didn't believe God would protect them and take care of them. So God took away the opportunity to go into the promised land. Then you talked about Apollonius of Tyana doing miracles, and it was claimed that he rose from the dead. I found an interesting page on this on the www.carm.org website. I'll read from it. First of all, the accounts of Apollonius were written well after he was supposed to have lived by a man named Philostratus from around 8070 to 80. He lived from 8170 to 8245. This is long after the New Testament was written. Therefore, the accounts of Apollonius were not written by eyewitnesses, as were the Gospels. If the critics want to maintain that the New Testament is full of myth and must be discredited, then so must the accounts of Apollonius, since the writings are written several generations after the fact. By contrast, the New Testament was written by the eyewitnesses of Jesus' life. Logically, it is the New Testament accounts that are far more reliable than those of Apollonius. Also, this would mean that if any borrowing was done, it was done by Philostratus, not by the gospel writers, that they borrowed from Christian ideas and applied that to my comments to Apollonius. Fourth, Philostratus, this is later on in another quote, fourth, Philostratus was commissioned by an empress to write a biography of Apollonius in order to dedicate a temple to him, and this means that there was a motive for Philostratus to embellish the accounts in order to satisfy the requirement of the empress. This is a different situation from these apostles who were beaten, who were chased around, who claimed that they had seen Jesus Christ rise from the dead. And there were 12 apostles. There were 500 altogether witnesses of the resurrection at that time. And let's see. You asked for opinions on intercourse. Save it for marriage. Marriage is holy and all, and the bed undefiled. But whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. That's what it says in towards the end of the book of Hebrews. So anyway, those are some comments. You were asking for comments and to your questions on Christianity. I just feel like my chin is chopped off here. Yeah, so I thought I'd respond. I know it's been about a year, but yeah, Happy New Year, and that's my response to your video. Thanks a lot.